In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint Skaeth's Wild Hunt for Beastgrave. A big thank you to Goblin Gaming who got these models out to me to paint. If you do want to support the channel, then please consider subscribing, and you can also use some of the links in the description. They really help me out. Hope you enjoy the video. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, let's get started. Now, first off, it's a black undercoat with white over the top in a bit of a zenithal. I want these to be quite bright, as opposed to Agrax Ravagers in the last video, which I wanted to be quite dark. So first colour we're going for is Mournfang Brown. We're just going to paint this all over the beast part of the model. So you don't need to see me painting too much of this. Probably going to need two coats as well, because it's even though it's a base paint, it's quite thin. So it's going to work it around all there and all the underneath. When it comes to painting, just get up to that last part. Don't go over the hooves, because they're a lighter colour. So I'm going to carry on finishing the rest of this, and then we'll come back and we'll have a little look at highlighting. Don't forget, like I said, probably going to do two coats of this. We're going to get all in there and all the front parts of the legs as well. Just leave the main body with the primer on it. So two coats of Mournfang Brown, and that's looking pretty good. It's really nice reddy brown. So what we're going to do now is we're going to highlight that, and we're going to use Scrag Brown, which is another orangey reddy brown. And in terms of what this is going to look like, we just want it to work around these big kind of areas of muscle. I'm not too concerned about how much space we take up. I'm using a number 1 size brush, Winsor and Newton there. So I just want to work it around all these areas where we think there's going to be a highlight. So where we've got the kind of under the knee there, the muscles in particular on this leg, and we really want to kind of get down into the bottom areas, because if you look at the box art, the bottom areas have got kind of like an orange look to them, and that's what we're going to try and replicate on this model. Okay, so work your way around it all the way down the hind and the tail and stuff, making sure we've got more Scrag Brown at the bottom than we have on the top, and then we'll come back and have a look at the next highlight. So we've popped that highlight on all over. Now the last highlight we're going to do is going to be Jokaero Orange, which is quite a bright, sharp, stark highlight. So I switched to a smaller brush. I'm down to the size 0 for this. And with this one, we just want to do it towards the bottom of the legs and the hoofs. And we want to draw in some of those lines there for the fur. We just want to get the topmost parts, and the other thing we want to do, we just want to get a real thin line highlight, much thinner than the Scrag Brown, just like that, just on the sharpest parts of the muscle, just to give a little bit of bioluminescence, I guess. And same for the tail, we'll just pull that along there in a nice line. So there we are. Work your way around the rest of the model, just putting this really thin highlight in, and then we'll come back and have a look at shading it down a bit so it's not quite as stark as it is now. And the next step is a nice easy one. So we're going to take Agrax Earthshade, and we're just going to pop this all over the brown areas. Now what you don't want is for this to pool, so just move it and keep it moving around the model so that it's spread quite thinly. I'm back on the size 1 brush for this. So take your time, work it round, and we'll come back and we'll re-establish some of the orange lights that we've got on the model. Once that Agrax Earthshade is dry, you just want to go back in with the Jokaero Orange and just re-establish some of those lights. So we're just putting little streaks down here. But what that Agrax Earthshade has done is really blend the rest of it together, which then makes sure it look really, really good. So again, I'm just going to re-establish there by kind of just drawing down on the fur parts. So I'm going to finish this off and then we'll move on to the next colour. Okay, so that's a really solid start to Skaeth. So let's get onto the leather. So the colour for this is Corvus Black. And we're going to use this to paint the leather strapping. So we've got this part here. So just pop it on and just take your time, be careful, working it around. And again, Corvus Black, it's a black kind of colour. It's a base colour, but it doesn't really cover very well on the first go. So we are going to have to get 2 thin coats on there. Let's work it around. So we've got that there, we've got the strap underneath. We've also got the straps around the front here, so just make sure we get those in as well. So I'm going ahead, finish the rest of the leather straps, so we'll come back and we'll have a look at shading and highlighting them. One area that I forgot to notice as well is the wrist wraps. They're also kind of black leather, so make sure you get those done. So if you haven't, go back and pop them up. Again with the Corvus Black. And all I'm going to do is take some Nuln Oil and I'm just going to run that all over the bits I've painted with Corvus Black. So you can do the same. Then we'll come back and we'll do a little bit of highlighting. When that Nuln Oil has dried, it should dull the leather a little bit. So what we want to do is just add a little bit of spark back in. I'm going to do that with a little bit of Dawnstone, but we just want to catch the edges. We don't want this line to be too thick. We just want it to be nice and thin and work its way around just like that. So this is why it's really important to have a good tip on your brush. I use Winsor and Newton brushes. I'll pop a link to them down in the description if you want to pick some up yourself. And it also does help support the channel, so I'm very, very grateful if you do want to use some of those links. So work your way around the rest of the model, just highlighting the leather with the Dawnstone, and we'll come back and we'll move across to start Skaeth himself. As I was working my way through highlighting, I realised I'd missed this leather strap going across there, so I went back and finished that the same way as did the rest of it. So if you haven't done that, I'd pop off and do it. Well, I was going to make Starting Flesh, and we're going with Flayed One Flesh to kick off. So I'm just going to work this through all the flesh. We'll pop it over that rune in there as well. And in all honesty, we may need 2 coats of this, because even though we've got a Zenithal Prime on there, where I've kind of spilled over with some of the leather, that might need just a little bit of extra attention. So take your time, work the Flayed One Flesh in, do the second coat and then come back and we'll get that shaded and highlighted. So it did take 2 coats just to get the Flayed One Flesh down. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to highlight with Pallid Witch Flesh. And this can be quite a thick highlight. It's quite a thin paint, so just take your time, get it on there. And you just really want to highlight the highest parts. Don't forget we've got the ears here, coming out the helmet, and also the fingers. So fingers are really easy to highlight. You just want to work your way along the shape of the model. So I'm going to go around and just check I haven't missed anything off there, and then when we come back we'll get this shaded. Once the highlights are down, you can see it's a really light colour. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Guilliman Flesh to shade it, but what I want to make sure you do is that when you get it on there, I don't really want to reload the brush at all. So this is going to last all across this bit. So what that means is that in terms of the shading, it will be very little, so we don't want it to pool anyway. We want to keep it moving around the model. Now, as it's a contrast paint, it will pull itself back together as it dries and it goes towards those recessed areas. What I want to make sure is that it does that, but then leaves quite a nice amount of highlighted flesh on there. Okay, so I'm going to go around and make sure that that's the case. Don't forget the ears, and we'll come back and see how it dries. Once that element flesh is dry, just take some of the Pallid Witch flesh. Just going to re-establish some of the highlights just under here. And just on those areas, things like, you know, the fingers, the shoulder muscle. Okay, so I'm going to work my way around and see if there's any other bits that will benefit from that, and we'll come back and we'll have a little look at some of the armour. So for the armour, we're going to give this a base of gold, and we're going to start with the Retributor Armour. I'm just going to pop this on all of the armour, all of the trim. Just work it around, take your time. It should cover in just the one coat, but if you do need to do another one, then feel absolutely free to do that. Don't worry too much if you get it on the antlers, the horns, because we'll come back and do those in a darker colour anyway. So I'm just going to work my way around, get all the armour trim done. Again, don't worry if you go onto some of the armour padding, because we'll be going over that later as well. So just take your time working around. We've also got the spear haft as well, so we can just colour that in the gold. Again, taking your time, make sure you don't go over any bits you've already painted. And then we've got the armour that goes around the haunches and also around the shield as well, and the shin armour there. So I'm going to carry on, I'm going to finish all the gold, and we'll come back and we'll have a look at shading it. So that Retributor Armour's dry, we're going to go over it with Liberator Gold. So this isn't a highlight per se, this is a proper layer. The reason that is because the armour is kind of like a shimmering green type colour. So in some places it looks silver, in some places it looks gold. So what I just want to do is make sure that this model has got the best opportunity to reflect that, and that's no pun intended at all. It's a bit of an accidental one. So just work your way around. For the spear is gold, so you can just give it a top highlight there with the Liberator Gold and work your way down there. And then when we come back, I'll have coated the rest of the gold with the Liberator Gold, and then we can have a little look at highlighting it. Once that Liberator Gold is dry, we're just going to take some Model Air Chrome, which is fantastic silver paint, and I'm just going to use that to highlight all these sharp areas where the light could catch. So it's nice and easy. Where I can, I'm using the shape of the model to my advantage, and where I haven't got that, such as here, I'm just going to use a nice point on the brush. In terms of how thick this highlight is, it's a fairly thick highlight. And the reason for that is I kind of want when I add the kind of shade to it, I want it to be quite different tones underneath. So it'll kind of give the effect that even though the model itself doesn't move, the shifting tones underneath will give the impression of movement. So I'm going to finish off the rest of this, just catching all the kind of silver bits. Again, for the spear, we can put a nice silver highlight down the middle, catch the gems. And then once I finish that, we'll come back and have a look at shading it. To get that green hint, the colour I'm going to use is Militarum Green. Now, like we did with the skin, we want to get this on, but we want to get it moving so it doesn't settle too much. So you can see there, actually, that's giving us a really nice green tint, but we don't want it to settle so that it pools too much over any particular part. So we can work that around the edge there. And there you are, you can see it's giving that nice green glow. So we'll do it for the rest of the armour as well. And then once it's done, we'll go back in and we'll have a look at just adding back some of those bright silver highlights with the chrome paint. Okay, so I'm going to finish off the Militarum Green, and when we come back we'll just highlight it a little bit more. And like I said, once that Militarum Green is dry, I'm just going to go back in with the chrome. We're just going to do it exactly the same way we did it before, just highlighting those sharpest raised edges. Nice and simple, nice and straightforward. And you can do as much or as little as you want. It's entirely up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish off this to the level that I'm happy with. And then we'll come back and we'll have a look at getting some of that padding done. So for the padding, we're going to start out with Khorne Red. So we're just going to paint that on. Take your time, obviously, we don't want to get it on the gold. So just work your way around with the Khorne Red. This is a nice rich red, so in most places it'll cover in just the one coat, but you may need to go in and give it two. So yeah, not too much paint on the brush, just work it in up to those edges and then just follow the shape of the model to get it done. You can see there, just needs a little bit more. And just up in here, you just need to be a little bit careful. In fact, I'll put a little bit more paint on just to get in there. So that's that, straightforward enough. So I'll go and finish the rest of the padding. So we got the shins, the shield, the shoulder, and of course that bit there on the haunches. And we'll come back and then we'll shade it. And to shade the padding, nice and simple, Nuln Oil. Careful you don't flood the padding, we just want to shade it down. And you can see there, everything is popping out of it. So that's looking pretty good, and also we've got the shins here as well. So work your way around the rest of it, and then we'll have a little look at highlighting. Once that Nuln Oil is dry, we really want to just accentuate some of the patterns on here. Now, because this is obviously a really small model, we just want to use paint to simulate where we've got weave. So what I'm going to do is take some Wazdakka Red, just going to draw some lines down to simulate the weaving. So for the ones that run this way, just do the weaving that way. And then you've got these here, so you can just do the weaving down there as well. So work your way around all of the model, getting those weaves in, and then we'll come back, we'll pop another little highlight in there just to make them pop. Once we've gone all over the model with the Wazdakka Red, we're just going to take some Squig Orange, and we're just going to try and accentuate some of these lines. So you can see there, it's a take your time kind of moment, but that's really making them pop out a little bit. So same again with this, really, is just work your way around the model, making these bits of weave pop out. And again, less is going to be more with these. So I'm going to work my way around the rest of it, and we'll come back and then we'll start to have a look at the horns and the hooves and this sharp bit on the tail here. So with that Squig Orange highlight, the shield and all the red armour padded areas are looking good. So let's have a look at the horns and then the hooves. So we're going to do these in black, so we'll start off with Abaddon Black. And just take your time working this around the model. Try not to get it on the hair, and the reason for that is it just makes painting the hair that little bit easier. So we've got the other side there. I also want to do the hooves as well. So this is fairly simple and straightforward. Just work your way there, not going over anything else. And then we've got the barbed parts of the tail as well. Just want to get those in, and also the sharp blades. So you can see there it's quite thin. So all that means is we'll just go and let it dry, and we'll go and just pop another coat on it just to make sure it's looking good. So I'll go and finish the rest of it. I'll put the second coat on and we'll come back and highlight everything. So I'm going to highlight the black, and I want the horns and everything to just look really sharp. So going back to Dawnstone, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly run that to follow the shape. So it can be a stark highlight, it just makes them look a little bit sharper, that a little bit more dangerous. So that's the horns. The other thing we've got to do as well is the hooves. And with the hooves, still using Dawnstone, what I want to do is we're just going to paint some lines down the hooves like this, and that just adds a bit of depth and texture to the hooves as well, which looks really good. So I'm going to go around the rest of the model and finish off the highlighting and the hooves, and we'll come back and we'll have a little look at the hair. So I want to get the hair all one kind of colour, so I'm just going to take some Agrax white. I'm going to work this all over the hair. This is kind of like a feature of the model, all these long flowing locks. So I've just watered some Agrax white down, and I'm going to work that into all the different bits of hair, being careful not to go over anything that might already be painted. What I will do is, you see there I've got that bit of gold just to tie the hair together. There's some bits all the way through the hair that are gold as well, so once I've actually done the red hair or the orange hair, I'll go back and I'll just put a little bit of gold over some of the runes in the hair. You can see them there. So work your way around with this Agrax white. And one thing I will say as well is when you come to the base, give the base just a little bit of Agrax white over as well. Just kind of uniform up some of the colours, because that's going to make it a lot easier for us to paint it when it comes to that point. Okay, so I'm going to finish painting up the rest of the hair, and I'm going to give the base a little bit of a once over as well, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at getting that red hair done. Painting the hair is nice and straightforward, so I'm going to take some Gryoh-Hound Orange contrast paint, and we're just going to work this all over the hair. And this is good because this will give us a base and a shade, and we can go and highlight it later on then as well. So just work this around. You can see there actually it's giving us a base shade and a highlight in there. So work this around. Be careful not to miss anything, because it's quite difficult to go back in afterwards to fix. And obviously be careful not to get it on anything you've already painted. So I'll go ahead and finish this, and we'll come back and we'll assess where we are as to whether we need to do a highlight or whether we're happy with what it looks like. As that's drying, I just want to take a little bit of Kislev Flesh, but make sure you've got very little on your brush, and we're just going to highlight some of these areas where the hair is sticking up This just adds some variation to the orange shade, and you'll be able to see in a mo the effects of the highlights. I think it is quite subtle, but also quite useful. So this is one of those things, you can do it if you want to, you don't have to, but you can see there, it just makes that orange hair that much brighter. So next up we'll have a look at the spear and doing some of these trinkets that he's got in his hair. So straightforward enough to start with. Just take some lead belcher and we're just going to paint this all over the spear, or the pointy bit at least. Don't forget to get in there. So that's the pointy bit of the spear. The other thing we want to do is just with these charms in the hair, we want to paint those as well, so be careful just to get the charm and not the actual hair itself. Just work your way around, make sure you get all of them. And I think the silver just adds a nice bit of variation in terms of the gold colour, breaks it up a little bit. Excuse me. And the other thing I'm going to do as well is we've got this insignia on the shield, so I was going to paint that with lead belcher as well. Just take your time, because you've done quite a lot of work under this, so the last thing you want to do is mess any of that up. And then once that's done, we'll shade it down a little bit with some Nuln Oil. So we'll finish off the rest of the metal and we'll come back and do some shading. And once you've finished with the lead belcher, it's nice and simple, bit of Nuln Oil just along the blade. We don't want it to pool anywhere, so just keep it moving. Make sure you've done the underneath as well. And we also want to put a little bit on this icon here, because we'll put a little highlight on as well, which will just make it pop a little bit, so we want it to fit in there. And you can see straight away I've put a bit too much Nuln Oil into there, so what I'm going to do, clean my brush off and just pop it in there and it'll pull it all out nicely. Okay, I'm not going to worry about putting Nuln Oil on these too much, because you just run the risk of ruining the hair that you've already done. So let that dry and then we'll come back and highlight, and we're getting quite close to being done on the model itself. Once that's dry, we'll take some chrome from Model Air. And again, don't load the brush up too much. We're just looking for capturing the edges, the sharpest points there. The same on this side. And if you're feeling skillful, you can go ahead and you can try and just pull a straight line down there like that, just to give that extra bit of shine. And then on the shield where you've got this insignia, we're just going to run it along the absolute highest parts to get that highlight. So it's nice and straightforward. Gives us a really nice effect. So there we go. So if we look around the model, we could probably pop a little highlight on some of these beads as well that are in the hair. We're pretty much done. We've just got some runes that we need to do. I'll call them runes, they're just some glowing bits. So I'm going to clean my brush and we'll come back. We've just got this one here, so I'm just going to pop some some chrome over that one there. And we've got that one in the stomach. Pop some chrome over that as well. And we'll come back and we'll just make them glow a little bit. The colour I'm going to use for the runes is Mortarion Green, and this is as simple as just popping it over like that, and you see that that gives it a bit of a nice kind of glow, green glow. Now the thing to do as well is just paint along the very lightly, with hardly any on your brush. You just want to paint along the skin as well, so that you get that kind of green reflected in there. So take your time doing this. You don't want to put too much on. So that's looking quite nice there, like that. Let it dry, and if you need to go in and do a second one, then of course that's your prerogative. You can get it looking exactly as you want. So Skaeth himself is all finished. What I'll do is I'm going to paint the base up, and I'll just talk you through the colours I've used, because it'll add quite a bit of time to the video. And all we're doing is we're going to use contrast paint, and we're just going to brush them over to get the effect we want. Okay, so that's the model finished. I've gone away and finished the base. So I've just used lots of contrast paints on there. So what I've done is, it was obviously white to start with, so I did the green sort of plantation bits using Militarum Green. The flowers, I've used Blood Angels Red, I've used Eandon Yellow, I've used Volupus Pink, and I've used Magos Purple. For the branch, I used Snakebite Leather, and then for all the ground around it, that's Wildwood. That little puddle, it's Aethermatic Blue, and what I've done is I've used some clear resin from Green Stuff World, UV resin, and popped it in there. You can use gloss varnish, you can use nothing at all, it's entirely up to you. And then that rock at the front is just Basilicanum Grey. Abaddon Black on the rim, and job done. This is looking really good. So there we have it, Skaeth's Wild Hunt done. I've shown you how to paint the main man himself, but you can use these techniques on all the other models that come with the Beastgrave set. I really hope you've enjoyed. If you have, leave a like and a comment down below. And of course, if you do want to support the channel, there are some links in the description. So the brushes I use, the models I've got, you can access all those through the links. I really appreciate any support that you can give. It doesn't actually cost you anything outside of buying what you might normally buy for the hobby anyway. It really helps me carry on making these videos for you. So I really hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.